This is not a drill. The Fiona and Cake trailer is here with a release date of August 31st. I cannot wait. But with this trailer comes a lot of interesting stuff, and I'm gonna try and break it all down and just try to understand it all. So let's start. Right away, two things. First, this is obviously a city and it looks kind of older. I'm thinking maybe 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s type city landscape, but right away does not look like Adventure Time at all. And another thing, does this bus look familiar? Kind of looks like Hot Dog Princess. That's all I'm saying. Got the hot dog, got the bun, got the crown. Another shot right here, another city landscape, looks pretty cool. Biggest thing to note here, Magic Man, Betty's hat, right there. I can't make out what this says. Home, I don't know what a business would be called that starts with H-O. Please let me know. Another thing in the background here, nothing stands out too much. These buildings kind of look like the Imaginary Resources episode from one of the human islands, but nothing too crazy so far. And again, I'm gonna miss a lot of stuff, so please let Boom, another big shot. What does this look like? BMO, but it's not BMO, it's an alarm clock. We have a comic book here that maybe resembles Blair. The book right here, that looks like the king worm. And then the can of juice over here kind of looks like Super Porp. And boom, our first look at Fiona. Right off the bat, this does not look like the Fiona that we all know and love from the Adventure Time series itself. She looks a lot more human. This looks like a normal world. And our first look at Cake the cat. And again, looks like a normal world. Cake is in a cage and she looks like a normal pet cat. And Fiona looks like she's living by herself as an adult in an apartment. She's got her uniform on. Let's see where this goes. Another shot right here, an aquarium. And who are these two people? It looks like Gunters. I don't know what this walking scene could mean. I'm sure these characters represent some people from the Adventure Time show, but I'm not too sure. And again, something just feels off about this universe. Like this weird little thing in the grate, this hole in the sidewalk. That could be very normal, but it stands out in a weird way. And this is Marshall Lee. Got the guitar, Marceline's bass, the bats, the death. This is obviously Marshall Lee.
Cake's been acting really weird.
Another Cake, the cat, looking like a normal cat.
Weird lately. What if she's just bored with...
And boom, we have the gender bent Ash. We have Wildberry Princess. Well, I guess Wildberry Prince. And I don't think this is Hot Dog Princess. I think this is just a normal looking wiener dog. Two more things to note from this scene particularly. You have two traffic cones. One of them's a normal traffic cone. And then one of them's upside down. Could mean something. But I think the coolest thing to point out in this scene is this rose. I don't know what it could mean. I don't know what roses stand for. But it stands out. So I think it's interesting.
with everything.
Boom. First look at Prince Gumball. It looks like he's working in a bakery or coffee shop. And there's two things to note out in this scene. The first and a little more reachy one is Coffee Queen, which would be resemblance to Ice Queen. Obviously, coffee and ice are not similar at all, but the first Fiona and Cake episode that we got, Ice Queen actually dressed up as Prince Gumball in like a skin suit to trick Fiona. So I think Coffee Queen and Ice Queen could be connected in some way. But then the second one, and I think is really cool, is you see it says smile here. But I think this could be an anagram for slime because it's not spelled out landscape mode, S-M-I-L-E. Obviously it still says smile, but I think they made it in this landscape mode to kind of point us in a direction that this could represent slime. Because if you remember, Prince Bubblegum was very jealous of Slime Princess that she learned her powers before her. But could be a reach.
It's more magic.
Cake the cat again is a normal cat, and this entire time Fiona is explaining that her world is very boring. They wish it was more magic, which will be important later on. Boom, more characters. I don't know who these characters represent, honestly have no clue, but this is Fern. I think this is very obviously Fern. You have the green hair, the flowers on her head, green flowers, that's obviously grass, and just the look of the character looks very Fiona-esque. And then the green backpack as well. So it looks like this is Fiona's job. She's a tour guide, and there's actually two more characters in this scene. First one, Abracadaniel, there he is. And then the second one, I feel like this represents somebody. The color scheme is telling me James, but then again, I feel like James would be a weird character to stand out, so I could be wrong there. But remember how I said that Hot Dog Princess bus from the beginning? Well, this is the same bus. You have the crown right here. The color scheme is very similar. I believe that she is inside of the Hot Dog Princess bus that we saw at the very beginning. And this is her like be in Puppy Cat world. Very cool, very cool. And then we get another one, right? We get another screen distortion and we're in a new reality. But this is where things start to blur because if you look at from this reality, from when they first reality, this is Cake the cat that we all know and love, right? Shape shifting, looks like Cake the cat from the series, boom. And we get another screen distortion into a new reality. And we see Cake the cat again, but this time it's the normal Cake the cat from the beginning. And the world that they're in looks very similar to the imaginary resources world that Bimo was in when they were on the human islands. I mean, the characters look very similar. I think that's where they're at. Even the tubes in the background, because that's the transportation that they use on the hub islands to travel from one island to the next. I just think the text confirms this. Leave your bunk world behind, leave the real world behind, and join the online world. But yeah, Cake the cat is a normal looking cat running through. Boom. This is our first look at Simon Petrikov. And a couple little things to point out. He's aging, which was something that was kind of left up in the air and Come Along With Me. He's very obviously an antiquarian with the paintings and pictures of historical things in the background. And his facial expression changed from happy to what looks like sad or stressed. And this is our first look at the Fiona and Cake that we all know and love from the series, which is interesting. And this is just more in general starting to look like the Adventure Time universe, right? We've seen these red ants before. And then we're back in the real world, or presumably what the real world is, because this is gender bent lumpy space, but as a human. This scene is also interesting because it's Fiona running down a street and changing jobs, which is something that we'll talk about in a little bit. But come back to Simon, and he's very obviously losing his mind. Look at how stressed and discerned he looks here. And now he's getting attacked by this giant sea monster. Like, what's going on? And I think this is the coolest part of the whole trailer. Come back to Simon, and he's screaming. And now he's upside down, but who's holding him? That's right, that's Finn. Top right, that is Finn, confirmed. And it's so cool because he looks a lot older in Obsidian, but he still has some of the stuff that he had from Together Again, like this brown shoulder thing. So cool. And then right here, we just get a whole montage of Fiona and Cake in these different multiverses. This is the very first image that we saw. We have Simon, but looks like the Ice King, or the beginning of Ice King in an alternate dimension. This is Fiona and Cake that we all know, but I think they're in the time room. Look at the squares in the background, which is something that will come up right here. This is Prismo in the same square tiled background.
I knew my life was supposed to be magic.
And that saying from Fiona, it's almost like a reaction to someone showing her that her life is magical. And then we get another cut here, which is interesting because we haven't had this for a while. And then it's Fiona and Cake jumping out of the time room to reveal the title card. So cool. So let's try and break it down. The very first 20 seconds of the trailer obviously show Fiona and Cake in a real world scenario, a world that we could live in. And throughout this entire 20 seconds, Fiona is complaining that her world is very boring. It's not magical enough. And that will lead us into this first dimension hop, which is interesting because how did they get there? Well, I think this is where this shot comes into play. However Fiona ended up in the time room, it looked like she made a wish. She made a wish to have her world more magical. And that's what happens here. Her world is now more magical, and she can transform between different dimensions at ease. However, it's also interesting to note that in this dimension, Cake the cat is running, and it's not the Cake the cat that we all know. It's the human Cake the cat from the very first beginning. And what's the deal with Simon? Well, here's what I think. Simon still does live in the Adventure Time universe that we all know, the land of Ooh. But Fiona lives in her own world, in the real world. But they still do exist, in fact, probably at the same time. So what happened? Well, remember how Ice King Simon got beamed these Fiona and Cake memories at night? It seems like whoever was doing this was just showing him the events of Fiona's real world. Or maybe even Simon knew these people before the Mushroom War. Simon lived in this world that we see in the beginning before the Mushroom War. That's why I think we see all the flashbacks with Marceline. I think this world that we see in the very beginning is the very world that Ice King, that Simon lived in before the Mushroom War happened. Now, why do I say this? I gotta have some reasoning, right? Well, I do. Prepare to have your socks blown right off. So Fiona is complaining about her world not being magical enough. And if you remember what Patient Saint Pym said about her world before the Mushroom War, that magic wasn't very strong. Are you starting to see the connection? Fiona is complaining that her world isn't magical enough. And Patient said that the world before the Mushroom War wasn't magical at all. Or was, but not very strong. And so whatever wish that Fiona asked for here in the time room to make her world more magical likely set off or set up the events for the Mushroom War to even start. Because we know Prismo's wishes are often double-sided. conflicted. They're good, but also bad. So if Fiona wished that her world was more magical, and we know that the Mushroom War brought magic back to the land of Ooo, her wish could very well have set up the events for the Mushroom War to even take place, which then leads us into these flashbacks. Simon either knew Fiona before the Mushroom War or was even friends with her, and probably made his fanfic stories in a way to remember her, because we know that Ice King didn't have any memories of Simon or who Simon even was, but deep down, Simon was there in Ice King, so maybe he made the fanfics in a remembrance to Fiona and Cake. And that's where this comes in. He made these fanfics and this little girl found them and fell in love with Fiona. She's dressed up like Fiona. But Simon now doesn't want anything to do with them, because remember, Ice King made him. Simon didn't make him, so that's why it's in the trash and he's closing his home or shop. He doesn't want anything to do with them anymore. But then what does this scene mean? Because this could very well be this little girl's imagination, but it's not, because this is Fiona, but it's not Fiona in her normal clothes that we would see her in the series. It's her work clothes. So that's very interesting, and I don't really know what it means. Does that mean that she could still be alive in the same universe? That she's in a different universe? I don't know. It's so confusing, but it's so cool to point out because the little girl is obviously a fan of Fiona and Cake, and this actually closely mirrors to the story of the episode Fiona and Cake and Fiona, where the other Fiona dressed up as Fiona fell in love with Fiona. I'm saying Fiona a lot, and dedicated her entire life to her. And it seems like that's a parallel to this little girl's story. She fell in love with Fiona and Cake and wanted to be exactly like Fiona. But that begs a question. If this is this little girl's imagination, why is Fiona not in her normal uniform that we see her in the series? Why is she in her work uniform? Did she go straight from her world to this world? It's so cool and confusing and awesome. And also, from what I understand, it looks like Fiona made a wish that brought her world more magical. But why is Cake running as a normal cat? It's not the Cake that we know. It's the normal Cake from the very beginning. So what happened? The mystery that brought them into this multiverse, or at least in the Adventure Time universe, because this is in Adventure Time. I believe this is in the Adventure Time universe, this world that we're looking at right now. Because, as you can see, these tubes that were used for transportation between the hub islands is the same thing that we see in the background of Simon closing his shop. So Cake, the normal cat, somehow ended up in the Adventure Time universe. Whether that be from the wish gone wrong, or just somehow found a wormhole. She is there. And thinking about it now, that's probably why Fiona has a work uniform on. They were directly transported from their world in the very beginning of the trailer to the Adventure Time universe. Because this little girl, again, is in the Adventure Time universe. So something to think about there, and I honestly don't know what it could mean, so please let me know. But then from this shot here, it looks like that however they ended up in the Adventure Time universe, because this is the squirrel from the Up a Tree episode, it looks like they're slowly transforming into the Fiona and Cake that we all know. Because although Cake does look like a normal-ish cat, we start to see signs of her shape-shifting abilities. And then them fighting in this ice cream land that we kind of saw in a whole trip of different multiverse hopping adventures, which was the premise of the show to begin with. So this trailer is so interesting because it combines two different worlds and it allows the fans to speculate so many different things. Like, how did Fiona and Cake end up in their world to the Adventure Time universe? Simon, it looks like, is losing his mind, but what does that mean? Is he blurring his realities? Is Fiona and Cake not even real? Is he losing his mind? Is he sad? Is he mad? I don't really know. But two things I think are for sure. The Adventure Time universe, the land of Ooo, Finn, all the characters that inhabit it are definitely still real and will make an appearance in the show. But at the same time, Fiona and Cake's universe that we saw in the beginning is also very real. Whether this happens before the Mushroom War, coexists alongside the Adventure Time universe, where the Mushroom War didn't even happen, or is just another universe, is still yet to be uncovered. But honestly, please let me know, did I miss something crazy that totally answers that question? I don't know. There's so many things to look at. I've watched this trailer like a bajillion times and I find something new every single time. One last thing to point out, which is also really cool. So if you remember back to the beginning when Fiona was complaining about her world not being magical enough, we get this screen distortion effect that signifies that they're in a new universe one more time. Right here to a new universe. And then through the entire 40 more seconds, we go from different universes. Adventure Time, back to Lumpy Space, because this is the Adventure Time universe right here. But then we go back to Fiona and Cake's universe where the humans are gender-bent versions of Lumpy Space. But if you notice, there's no screen distortion. And I don't know what that can mean because the screen distortion isn't over yet. But even as we go from here to here to here, to there, there's no screen distortion. And right there. So does that mean that the entire sequence before this was an alternate reality? I don't know, but it's so interesting, and I think that they were put there on purpose to mean something. That something is, I don't know. I'm not very smart, but please let me know. I missed a lot of things, I'm sure I did, so please tell me, but I think that about wraps it up. I tried to avoid some spoilers because there are some discussions online for people who are actually at San Diego Comic-Con, and I didn't really want to bring it up because I feel like that's a little spoilery, but yeah, I cannot wait. August 31st. Don't you worry. As soon as these episodes start to drop, I will make a video on each episode trying to explain it all. And I heard there might even be a season 2 for this, so I honestly cannot wait. But again, please let me know if I missed something because I'm sure I did. I can make a follow-up video if I missed a ton of things. But yeah, that's about it. As always, my friends, stay adventurous.